Well, hello there, and I do hope you're all well. It does seem that at the moment our Bodger, our Wurzil Churchill, our self-entitled Etonion prick Alexander Boris Pfeffel Johnson, is in the good books with his swivel-eyed loons within his own party over the Christmas and New Year period. After a year where our out-of-control wonky supermarket trolley had spent 2021 bouncing into one scandal only to bounce into another, so will our Bodge have a more quieter and more prosperous 2022? Well, according to an article I read, no, not really. When someone doesn't have a long-term plan and all he does and says whatever is required to just get through the day, they'll more often than not come a cropper, won't they? But in the article, it lists 9 reasons why in 2022 it could be just as, if not more, of a difficult year than the one he had had in 2021. And here are the 9 reasons. We all remember the devastating scenes of last winter with hospitals overrun and the NHS unable to carry out routine treatment due to the government's lack of clarity and leadership. Well, even though the data is still pouring in and it still seems like whether we will have a repeat of last Christmas is in its early days, it is clearly obvious that our Bodge has run out of political capital with his fuck nuggets within the Looney Tunes of his own party. If he wants to impose any more fresh restrictions, these complete and utter bell taps are already chewing on their own knuckles and absolutely butthurt over at the idea of wearing a face mask and the Plan B measures. So Bodger will have no chance in getting them on side with further restrictions. But again, like with anyone wearing a Teflon suit who dives headfirst into a pool full of shit, experts have given him a get-out clause by saying that, in the long term, we will have to live with it, and with South Africa removing self-isolation for COVID sufferers and treating it no differently to a cold or flu. So don't be surprised that our gutless Wurzil Churchill does the same to placate the likes of Desmond face nappy wearing Swain and Mark Wiggy Fabricant in an attempt to save his own political career. His Fruit Loop backbenchers might forgive him, but if we have a repeat of last Christmas, I get the feeling the public might not. Yes, Alexander Boris Pfeffel Johnson's manifesto, like every other Tory manifesto, was full of meaningless buzzwords, and that old classic was rolled out again. Yes, levelling up of the left-behind areas and spreading opportunity beyond London and the south-east. Yes, that old chestnut. Well, the white paper on levelling up, written primarily by Neil O'Brien, was supposed to provide more flesh on the bones, but it has been repeatedly delayed. What a shocker, eh? But apparently in January the paper will be revised by our bollocks-face Michael Gove and Andy Haldane, the former Bank of England chief economist, and rumour has it that it will call for a new system of local government with directly elected leaders taking responsibility for their own areas. Don't know about you, but that sounds like a bit of a cop-out and trying to rule without responsibility, and more importantly, levelling up just sounds meaningless. Again. But since bollock face Michael Gove took over at the Department for Levelling Up and Housing and Communities and delivering on the government pledge to overhaul England's system of house building, they had a plan, apparently. There was no need to gain permission to build in designated areas, while each town was to be given binding targets for the development of new properties. But these plans had to be ditched after the swivel-eyed loons within his own party had a hissy fit, and whether rightly or wrongly, they were kicked into the long grass. Now Michael Gove has signalled support for the idea of street votes, which would allow homeowners to vote on whether their neighbourhood should be allowed to build more, which to me sounds like another cop-out. In other words, everyone wants to see more houses built, but just not on my doorstep. So no houses will be built, and they'll use this Street votes idea as an excuse for not building any more social housing. But then again, the way my cynical mind works, I could be wrong. This year there will be more fresh talks about a deal that was signed and sealed into international law and the Northern Ireland Protocol, where our Lord Frost had spent all last year trying to rip up the world-beating deal he got a peerage for by threatening to trigger Article 16. Well, our vacuous Foreign Secretary, Maggie Thatcher wannabe, and also now the new Brexit Secretary, now has a new master plan to wrongfoot the evil overlords of the EU. No, it's not to look all tough and strong by holding a phone upside down for a photo opportunity. No. Far more cunning than that. She dug deep into the darkest depths of the sawdust between her ears, and she can catch them off guard by triggering a totally unknown part of their deal called Article 16. That'll get the evil overlords of the European Union totally wrong-footed, won't it? Bet they were totally shocked by these unforeseen events, and no doubt Jeff Taylor will be messing his pants and the curtains behind him too in his next video. But more worrying is the appearance of growing trade frictions with EU nations as a result of Britain's departure from the single market, and customs union trade with the continent has slumped and could get worse when further goods checks are introduced later this year. Now, May the 5th should be very interesting, where much of the country goes to the polls to elect local councillors. Every councillor in London and Birmingham is up for re-election, with most other councils seeing half or a third of members facing the voters. Now, like I said earlier, how Bodge is in the swivel-eyed loons on his backbench's good books, but he's still very vulnerable. Both sandal-wearing Rishi-Dishy Fishy Sunak and uncomfortable chair-using Liz Truss are both eyeing up the keys to number 10, but that will only happen if our Bodger resigns or is dragged out kicking and screaming, if 55 backbenchers decide that enough is enough. But we all saw how long it took them to drag our Maybot out of number 10, so if anyone thinks that it will happen any day now, I'm going to be sadly very disappointed, unfortunately. Even though he needs to watch his back with his Fruit Loops within his own party, he has to be mindful of the other Fruit Loops within the Reform Party, picking up disillusioned Tory voters as well who, wait for it, think our self-entitled Etonion prick Alexander Boris Pfeffel Johnson has turned into a commie Trotskyite loon and a lefty lover. Yes, we've really jumped the shark, haven't we, on this one? In the article, it also talks about how Keir Starmer will be going into the new year a lot happier than he will have done last year. He not only seems to have a shadow cabinet that he wants, but also any leadership challenges are now, for the moment, seem to be a thing of the past. But when Keir Starmer outlines a manifesto for the next general election, it will be racked with danger as far as I can see. See, if he decides to kick out Jeremy Corbyn's policies, he risks the wrath of Jeremy Corbyn's base and some backbenchers. But it wouldn't surprise me though if he did keep them in. I can see billboards up and down the Labour red wall seats, a picture of Keir Starmer morphing into a slightly dodgy looking and very Russian type image of Jeremy Corbyn, with the slogan underneath saying, "Vote Keir, you get Corbyn." So I must admit, how Labour goes on this year will be very, very interesting. But if Labour get it right, it should make next year for our Bodge very uncomfortable. Get it wrong, I think they could have missed a massive own goal. Now, when it comes to local elections, 2021 Liberal Democrats, as we all know, paced the blue wall on 2 occasions. North Shropshire recently due to the Owen Paterson scandal, and also the Cheshire and Amersham by-election. But they're still only on 10% in the polls. The Lib Dems will be hoping for more by-elections in 2022 to keep them in the spotlight, otherwise they risk being squeezed between Labour and the Greens in the eyes of the left-leaning voters, who do not always understand what the party has to offer that others cannot. So there you are, 9 very good reasons, and quite interesting legitimate reasons as to why 2022 could be just as difficult for our self-entitled Etonian prick Alexander Boris Pfeffel Johnson as 2021 was. Now, do you agree? Don't you agree? Or do you have any other suggestions that this article didn't mention? Well, if you do, you know what to do. Pop it in the comment section below and let us know. Right, I shall leave the video here. Until the next time, I shall bid you farewell and take care.